about a little bit today is ethanol and why I don't feel the government should be subsidizing it at all. Now, 95% of American families today own a vehicle. I myself own 3. I'm sure many of you own at least 1. And with the ever-growing population today, global population, ownership of vehicles, the American population, there's an increase in demand for fuel. And with an increase in demand is going to come some form of an increase in supply. Now, most fuel that we know today is made from a fossil fuel. Most cars are powered by gasoline or diesel. Now, these are all finite resources, and by finite resources means it's going to run out at some point. Even the electric cars that people use today, while maybe they per se don't run on a fossil fuel, they're still powered by the grid, which is going to come from some form of fossil fuel, from coal energy or something of that nature. Now, what the government has tried to do is, since 1980, they've tried to develop a renewable energy resource that we can use to replace our dependency on fossil fuels. So they've been using ethanol. Now, in America, we use ethanol based on corn production. So we'll produce corn and we'll get a byproduct out of that corn, which will be ethanol. Now, in other countries, Brazil, for instance, they use sugarcane as their main source for ethanol content. Now, the percentage varies from pump to pump, but most of you will see that when you go to a gas station, it'll say your fuel may contain up to 10% ethanol content. Now, 96% of all pump stations in the US now contain some form of ethanol blend. Now, when they're producing it, they have to subsidize the farmers for the ethanol content. Currently, we subsidize around 45 cents a gallon for ethanol production. And since we've started this back in around 1980, it's been about $45 billion that we've subsidized to farmers for ethanol production. Now, the RFS, which is the Renewable Fuel Standard, they would like to see a mandate of 37% of all corn production being used for ethanol content. Currently, gas prices are around $3 a gallon, where if you were to buy a gallon of ethanol in the market, they average around $1.90. Now, with a 45-cent subsidy that's being paid to that from the taxpayers or from the government to these farmers, ethanol prices realistically would be closer to $2.35 or higher for that same gallon, which doesn't put it at a real big competitive advantage over gasoline. And then the problem is that ethanol itself does not have as good energy content as gasoline does. It doesn't burn as efficiently, so you get a decrease in mile per gallon. Ethanol currently is around 10%, which is called E10, and that is around 5 to 6% less fuel economy than just 100% gasoline. Now, the EPA would like to see that bumped up to 15%, which would be an E15 blend. And that's going to lose you another 2 to 3% of your fuel economy. But the Automobile Associates of America, their problem is that ethanol is really corrosive. It's hard on vehicles. They say if we go to an E15, that 95% of all cars on the road today are not going to be able to handle it. It clogs up fuel pumps, fuel injectors, fuel lines. It's just kind of a corrosive material. The problem is that it has 2 main things. It absorbs water, so that dilutes the fuel, and it also causes corrosion. And then the other thing is it dries out the lubricants that are used in moving parts in the mechanical system. Now, beyond just fuel, when we look at ethanol, which is made from corn, corn prices are going to be affected by this large demand that's going in for fuel use. So, you look at a bushel of corn in 2000, it was $2 a bushel. In 2012, it was $8 a bushel. Right now it's come back down, it's still around $4 a bushel, but when these corn prices go up, it's going to cause a ripple effect into other activities. Feed for animals generally is done with some type of a corn, dog food is made with corn. Just normal food consumption is going to use a lot of corn product, even high fructose corn syrup. And when these prices go up from one, the prices are going to rise for all of them. So while you might save 10 cents a gallon on your fuel, you're going to cost yourself quite a bit more than that at the grocery store. Now, I know my grocery bills are at an all-time high. I'm sure other people's are as well. And I'm not saying that there's not a need for renewable energy, because there is a need for renewable energy resources out there, but it just comes down to the rate of return on your investment. The EROI, which is your energy return on energy invested, it kind of judges out, it's a scientific method to say how efficient is this fuel production that we're doing. So they look at all these renewable resources. Now, currently hydro has the best return on investment, followed by coal, oil, wind, nuclear, solar, ethanol, and then finally biodiesel. So it's a really inefficient system. We put a lot of energy and a lot of money into developing it, and we just don't get much return on the same investment. And like I said, the advantages that the government wanted, they wanted to lower fuel prices, which fuel prices since 1980 have done anything but go down. They wanted to have a renewable energy resource, but they've started to subsidize. They're not letting the free market compete to see what would be the best energy substitute for fossil fuels, because we're kind of, handicapping the system. And I just don't, like I said, the government should not be involved with government subsidies. They should let the free market system determine what the best use is for each of these fuel products.